very surprised that Minnesota decided not to tag Darnold and instead potentially going with the sign for a defined long-term, but long-term deal like a Baker Mayfield 3-year deal.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. You mentioned his regression in the game against the Lions, which was for the number 1 seed in the NFC. That was a big game, and they lost that. They weren't even really that competitive in that game. And the last game, that was the last game of the season, and then his poor play against the Rams in the playoffs. I mean, he was holding the ball way too long. He got sacked 8 or 9 times. So he just didn't play well at all. And I feel bad for him because he did have a good season, and to have it end like that and to have everybody just remember that, really, I think most people are just remembering those last 2 games. They could have tagged him and then recoup draft capital by trading him to a quarterback-needy team. Maybe that would have been an option, but I don't think that works well. And tag and trade is very rare. You restrict yourself and your options when you tag somebody, when you tag a quarterback like that. When you tag his entire $41 million counts against the cap, and the Vikings don't have a lot of cap space, so using $41 million of it right now for that, I don't think they wanted to do that. He gets to control kind of where he goes. That's not something they'd want. Every team knows that you don't want to play him, that you have no intention to play him. So he loses trade value. I think the leverage that you have when you're trying to trade a cap quarterback that is very not good at all. There are likely only 2 or 3 possible trade partners out there for him, and so I think that, and you would tie up most of the Vikings cap space would be tied up if until he was traded, and I'm sure they want to do some action here in free agency right off the bat. So tagging him would hurt those options. Effectively gives him a no trade clause, I think, when you tag him, because the trading partner is going to want to know whether he will sign a long-term deal before making the trade, and that's unknown. The Vikings could get probably third-round compensatory pick in 2026 draft, depending on the compensation pick formula. If the way they're going now, potential landing spots for Darnold, maybe the Giants. Maybe the Jets. I doubt the Jets because he's probably got a sour feeling towards them. But if they offered him big money, then probably he would forget all the bad things that happened then. The Steelers, but I think the Steelers are going to sign Fields again, and I think that makes a lot of sense. The Raiders, I think they're going for Wilson. Is it possibly re-signs with the Vikings? I think that probably makes the most sense. I think that's probably the best. That's his best option. And maybe theirs too. And it just depends on what the money's going to be and the length of the contract.
Well, I think obviously the tag and trade idea is out the window, and supposedly that's what Albert Bruce said, is that the tag and trade was a potential idea that the Vikings could do. But here's the funny part. Nobody wanted to trade for Sam Darnold. And I think that's, what lasting image do we have of Sam Darnold? Is it the 14-2 record that he had, or the final 2 weeks where he completely fell apart? Where, yes, he did get sacked more, passer rating plummeted, touchdown-interception ratio was 1-to-1. Passing yards per game plummeted as well. Completion percentage in the toilet, and he didn't win a single game. Add the last 2. And that's the last image that we ever saw of Sam Darnold. The 9-sack abomination against the Los Angeles Rams, holding on to the ball for too long. And supposedly, Adam Schefter reports that apparently people now think Sam Darnold hit his ceiling with the Minnesota Vikings, which is completely understandable. Because what we saw the last 2 weeks was what Sam Darnold himself said in a mic'd-up moment during their 33-0 loss in 2019 to the New England Patriots, where he said he was seeing ghosts. Well, that's what it looked like the last 2 weeks. The Lions did a number with they were the most banged-up team in the NFL this season, and they tormented Sam Darnold the entire season. And we can talk about how, they were missing their number 1 offensive lineman, but they were for a majority of the season. Christian Darrisaw went down pretty early on in the year. So they had to deal with several games without him, and they still won games. I don't think Sam Darnold was worth the $41 million franchise tag that the Vikings would have had to give him if they decided to tag him today. I don't think he's worth that whatsoever. And now we're hoping that a team signs him at any value right now, or at least the Vikings can lure him in and say, well, you just went 14-3. We did make the playoffs. You never did that before, truly, by leading a team to the playoffs. He rode a nice wave with the Niners last season, but this prior season, he was a big part of why the Vikings were in the playoffs, because he was the starting quarterback. He handles the ball in every play, like you always say. But the defense, we have to also acknowledge, the defense to the first about 10 weeks was arguably the most dominant defense in the NFL, just by their insane pressure rate, quarterback hit, pressure percentage, all of that. They were an incredibly dominant defense. But then when it was Sam Darnold's turn, where the defense started to, shake and quiver a little bit, it was Sam Darnold needing to step up, and he didn't. And those last 2 weeks are the last impression that we have of Sam Darnold. And SpotTrack has his current calculated market value at a 4-year, $160 million contract. That means Sam Darnold's worth $40 million a year. Not a chance. He is, and what's crazy is, I feel like we've seen Sam Darnold for several, he's only 27 years old. So he's not this 30-plus-year-old quarterback trying to find another team. No, he's 27 years old, but the fact that, according to Schefter, teams already believe that he hit his ceiling, well, let's take a look around, let's bring back up the graphic of these quarterback-needy teams. Let's bring you back in on this.
Thank you.
What team has a comparable roster to the Minnesota Vikings?
On this list?
Of the quarterback-needy teams and potential quarterback-needy teams.
I would say
not a single one.
Not all of any of them.
If Devontae Adams was still on the Jets, I would say them, because you have two good receivers in Garrett Wilson and Devontae, just like how I'm not comparing them, apples to apples here.
You were speaking pretty highly just a few minutes ago about the Colts receivers.
Are they Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison? Hell no. But they're good receivers. Alec Pierce just led the league in yards per reception at over 22. Also 7 touchdowns. Josh Downs just had 800 yards. Michael Pittman, he dealt with injuries, but he is a very good receiver. But he's not Justin Jefferson.
No, that's true.
So yeah, they have a lot of good receivers. They don't have anyone elite like Justin Jefferson. But no team has a comparable roster to the Minnesota Vikings. They don't have the defense. The Steelers have half a season.
The Steelers maybe have the defense.
For 8 weeks.
Yeah, I know. They get tired.
Weeks.
They fall apart at the end.
Because that's how the Steelers operate. A heavy defense, and then the offense picks up the back end of the season, which Russell Wilson, they average 14 points by like week 10 on. That's something that you don't want to see. But yeah, no other team has a comparable roster. And honestly, coaching staff as the Minnesota Vikings do. So any one of these 8 teams, you can look at Sam Darnold and say, okay, well, we're not going to give him $40 million a year. If that's what the Vikings are offering him, have at it. By all means, go right ahead. Spend $40 million on a guy that's seeing ghosts.
I don't think they're going to do that. Maybe the Browns. Browns. I mean, I don't think he's going to get 4 years, $160 million. There's no way that's going to happen now, given what's happened already. Matthew Stafford going back to the Rams. The Steelers looking that probably Fields is going to be their quarterback. The Raiders probably going to go with Russell Wilson because Pete Carroll is their coach. The Titans thinking maybe the Titans, but the Titans thinking Will Levis, they're going to give him another chance. The Browns, they still got Deshaun Watson. He can't play next year. What they're going to do is hard to say. Maybe, but Darnold isn't going to want to go there because it's a 1 or 2 year deal maybe. Competition for Richardson, he may have to stoop to something like that because there won't be any other opportunities.
I would also say when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, I don't know if I would put Sam Darnold in a division with Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I understand he just went to a division that just had Jared Goff and the Lions, but they lost both games. They're going up against the Packers, a very formidable opponent. And the
first game against the Lions was very close.
They won on a game-winning field goal.
Yeah.
And then also Chicago, as you famously said, you call them 5-12 record, nailed that on the head 100%. They were arguably the most disappointing team in the NFL. I would say the 49ers, just based on the fact they just went to a Super Bowl, but they were banged up with injuries. This was just poor performance. There was really no one that was hurt. It was just terrible performance. So going into that division with a Joe Burrow, a Lamar Jackson, Mike Tomlin, and that Steelers defense, I think that's terrible. I think, honestly, out of these teams that have a serious shot, to sign him, again, define serious competition. Does Sam Darnold equate to serious competition? Because I honestly do think
for Anthony Richardson, I would say yes.
Yes. Yeah. Again, is Chris Ballard trying to give Richardson a true shot at seeing if he beats out a decently hard quarterback opponent? Or is he just saying competition, meaning a tier 5 quarterback, just to give Richardson the confidence of beating someone they brought in for competition?
It might be that because they said initially we're drafting him. We know he is somebody that needs work. He hasn't had that much experience. We're going to take our time, but they aren't taking their time. They're impatient. They want him to be a star. Yeah. And he hurt himself by taking himself out of the game because he was fatigued.
Correct. Joe Flacco came in and
they say he wasn't well prepared for games. So some of it's on him for sure. But I think the Colts are going to give him every chance.
In Sam Darnold's defense, did he have what before the season we expected to be, meaning they're going to start Sam Darnold? Oh, they're trying to just build up draft capital. They're just trying to be low, get more picks or whatever. They're going to be a 6-7 win team. I think that's the expectation going into the season.
For the Vikings.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden they start winning games and they're in the NFC number 1 seed competition. And then now they're fighting. It went all the way up until week 18 for a battle, not only for the NFC North, but also the first seed in the NFC. He had a 66% completion percentage, 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns. The 12 interceptions, you would love to see a little bit, further down. But still.
He had the best receiver in the NFL on his team, and Justin Jefferson.
I'd give the Jamar Chase, but
close. One of the top 3.
Correct. 100%. That was the shock of the NFL. The Minnesota Vikings, led by Sam Darnold,
won 14 games.
Yeah. And had an opportunity to be the number 1 seed in the NFC.
So some of that is on him. I mean, that he played a big role in them winning 14
Correct.
games.
He obviously had a career year, and he was a large part of why the Vikings got to that point. But outside, it's you could argue this about Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. How much of it was the system versus how much of it was him? Because once you didn't have the incredible blitzing and high-pressure defense, once your offensive line became a little bit shaky, once the running game with Aaron Jones wasn't as effective, once you really had to rely upon Sam Darnold, he had moments in the season. I mean, he had 5 game-winning drives and 3 fourth-quarter comebacks.
Yeah, not bad.
But in the highest stakes, cards pushed to the middle of the table, where literally it was number 1 seed or have the highest amount of wins for a wild card team in NFL history. You ended up being the latter, which is you had 14 wins, made the wild card, and then got destroyed by probably one of the youngest defenses in the NFL with the defensive rookie of the year in Jared Verse and the Los Angeles Rams. Mm-hmm. Like, it was that bad.
The Rams are good, though.
They are good.
The Rams are good. They gave the Eagles a very hard time.
But again, it matters about what have you done for me lately. And this is in the very, true sense of lately, because what is Sam Darnold going to be known for? The 14-2 or the 0-2?
I already said that he's tarnished by those last 2 games.
Last 2 games,
he was on his way.
$40 million per year.
If he'd gotten the number 1 seed, and even if he'd lost the playoff game by a very close score,
if he made it respectable, yeah,
he'd be respectable. He'd be in line for a big contract.
100%. Yeah. Those last 2 games cost him the $40 million per year, or hell, 1 year, $41 million franchise tag. Those last 2 weeks are like, oh, is this Jets Sam Darnold? Because even on the Panthers, he had some respectable games. He went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady a couple times. But these last 2 games is like, okay, so did Sam Darnold revert back when, he faced some adversity, a little bit nervous. So what are other teams going to look like? And really the question is, how desperate are some other teams?
Bring those teams up again.
The teams up again, I got you.
My thought on the Giants, their smartest move to me would be to trade up to number 1 and pick one of the 2 quarterbacks, either Ward or Sanders.
So you think the Browns are going to draft a quarterback then?
The Browns?
Yeah, the Browns. They have the number 2 overall pick. Giants are number 3.
Yeah, I do. I think they probably will.
Okay.
Why wouldn't they?
That's it.
Why wouldn't they?
Well, we'll make our mock drafts in 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So you'll see the
But I don't think the Giants are going to go for Sam Darnold.
Interesting.
And I don't think it would be wise for them to do that either. I think they're gonna have a terrible year. I just don't see any way they can have a good year. Their schedule is so difficult. They'd be better off to call it a rebuilding year again and draft a quarterback. I think that would be their best move, and they should trade up to get it.
Interesting.
Either Sanders or Ward have the potential to be great quarterbacks, so why not do that? I think that would be more interesting for the New York market to watch that and see than to see, Aaron Rodgers out there stumbling around or Sam Darnold out there when everyone knows he's a question mark.
He could be seeing ghosts just in a different uniform
Yeah.
for the third time.
Yeah, in New York.
He did that with New York. He
In
did
New
that
York.
at the very end of the Vikings tenure, and he could be doing it in the what do they call it? Something blue. The Giants blue.
Big Blue.
Big blue. Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't care enough. Sam Darnold. Big question marks. What about the Raiders?
I don't think so. I think that's going to be Russell Wilson.
Fair enough. That makes sense.
If it
Former
isn't,
coach.
then maybe.
Yeah. Hey, that's what Diana Rossini says. A little sprinkle of some Raiders, but focused heavily on Russell Wilson. Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching this clip of the Harvey Hour. If you want to watch the full show, you can by clicking the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to take the show with you on the go, it is available wherever you get your podcast. We go live here on YouTube every single Tuesday and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and the notification bell to get notified whenever we upload a video and whenever we go live.